24th of October 2024. Going straight on to the agenda. 1, apologies for absence. Everyone is here. 2, any declarations of interest? None. If we can go on to the third item of the agenda, which is the Strategic Housing Investment Plan 25-2030, and that's going to be taken by Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. The purpose of the report is to seek approval for the proposed Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 2025 to 2030 and for its submission to the Scottish Government. In addition to the preparation of a local housing strategy, the Council is also required to prepare an annual Strategic Housing Investment Plan, known as the SHIP, setting out the detail of the Council's affordable housing investment priorities and detailed programme for delivering this with our partners over the next 5 years. Members should note that affordable housing can include homes for social rent, mid-market rent and low-cost entry home ownership. The SHIP details the number of homes that will be built, location and who the developer will be. The profile of the programme should reflect the strategic priorities set out in the LHS for affordable housing delivery and should address identified local need for affordable homes. The Scottish Government committed £3.6 billion through its affordable housing supply programme over the current parliamentary term. However, members should note that the national budget for 24-25 was reduced by 25%. The need for affordable housing in East Rentry is acute, with significant shortage across all housing tenures. Social housing represents only 12% of all homes in the area, and the authority has an expensive housing market that is inaccessible to many residents to rent or buy in. This was acknowledged by the Council last month through the declaration of a local housing emergency. The current confirmed Scottish Government funding only covers the current year of 24-25 at £5.5 million, a drop of 25% in line with the national reduction. Therefore, we've assumed a sustained reduction for 25-26, with possible recovery to previous levels from 26-27 onwards. The current funding suggests that just under £35 million may be available over the next 5 years for projects in East Renfrewshire. This is estimated to deliver up to 444 new affordable homes over that period. The Council expects to over-programme the SHIP by around 25% to provide for delays and slippage in programmes. Funding is delivered in the form of grants and funding levels are set out in the paper. Members will note the Scottish Government announced an additional funding of £40 million for 24-25 for councils to acquire new homes. As a result, the Council has received notification that the funding for this year will be £196,000. An additional £40 million is expected to be available next year, but the funding allocation for that is not yet known. The SHIP programme for 25 to 2030 set out in Appendix 1. Whilst the proposed SHIP is estimated to deliver 444 new homes, if additional funding becomes available and slipping projects can proceed, we could get up to 553 new homes over the next 5 years. At least 10% of the new homes programmed are expected to be wheelchair accessible or adapted to lifetime needs. Work is also going on to develop mid-market rent to help affordability gap between social rented and private housing in the area. Once submitted to the Scottish Government, the Council will receive a strategic local agreement setting out the agreed projects to be funded. This is expected in March 2025. Members should be aware that the SHIP programme is also heavily reliant on landowners and private sector developers bringing forward sites for development. This presents an element of risk in delivery timescales. In conclusion, the SHIP details how available funding for affordable housing will be invested in East Rentry over the next 5 years. Demand for social housing, especially new council housing, continues to outstrip supply available. Housing services will continue to actively explore options for increased affordable housing in conjunction with local partners. However, members should note that with reduced funding and increase in building costs, the delivery of essential new housing remains a significant challenge for the Council and its delivery partners. The Council's Cabinet is asked to approve the East Rentry SHIP for 24 to 30 submission to the Scottish Government and note the significant pressure for affordable housing in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thanks for keeping on going during the background rustling noises that we heard. Who would like to come in first? Councillor Pragnell.
I think there's another microphone on. Just switch yours on. Sorry. It was on the slippage site attached to the appendix, and it's page 10. So it mentions the Hugh Fraser Retirement Village Partnership, Ironside Court. I was just wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail as to what this entails, or could potentially entail.
Suzanne, could you use your microphone, please? And actually, can you move the microphone a little bit closer to you, because you're quite quietly spoken.
Can I just check, you talking about the Hugh Fraser site or the Ironside Court? Hugh Fraser site. That is a site that already exists, but it is private housing at the moment, and they have significant investment costs to bring the property up to use. What we're looking for is an RSL partner to partner with them and develop additional high support care needs, but it would be social housing. So at the moment it's private, but we are looking to find an RSL developer.
Thanks, Suzanne. And on that, can I come back on the Ironside Court as well? I notice it's Hanover Housing Association. If there's any more details about that, because I noticed both sites are looking at wheelchair accessible accommodation. Again,
Ironside Court is a site that already exists, but it's very sheltered accommodation, and there is not supply to meet that need now. So Hanover are looking for additional funding to convert and deliver a new mainstream accommodation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Suzanne, you touched on, obviously, the grant is significant, and we're doing the best I think we can, really, with the current circumstances. But obviously there's 2 budgets coming up, and I'm just trying to gauge exactly what the impact of were the grant to be restored. What would be the impact for us? Can we accelerate? Hopefully I think it would be positive, but also long term as well. If we are faced with the same reduction for consecutive years, so it's a kind of 2 parts to it. If you could,
Okay, if funding was restored, we have a number of projects that we've had to move out. If we fund restored, we will bring those projects forward. So, for example, there's projects the council is delivering at Barhead Road and Commercial Road. Should funding be restored, we will try to bring those projects forward. We do similar discussions with our partners if they have projects that they could bring forward earlier. So there's plenty of projects, it's just about when we can actually fund them based on the funding we have available. In terms of reduction, if it remains at this level, that will be a really difficult conversation we have to have with partners, and looking at what we can maximise for delivery. That will be a challenge in maximising units as much as possible, but we have to work with what we got. Most of our partners, including the council, rely on these grant funding to be able to afford to deliver new housing. Without that, I think the challenge would be massive in order to bring these units forward.
So the impact's not just with us, that you mentioned the partners?
Yes, so this funding applies to other partners. So, for example, Barhead Housing Association also rely on these grant funding, and they would need this to bring their sites forward.
Okay, well, we'll look forward, hopefully, with some optimism that maybe get some good news in the future. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Devlin, would you like to come in now?
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne, obviously there's not many surprises in this paper at all, because we do review this with Councillor Devlin on a very regular basis, so we welcome this. One area that we have raised before, and it would be useful to just get an update, is really the St Thomas's site, which we've mentioned previously. What is the status of that, and what is required to bring that into the SHIP?
The current site is not allocated for affordable housing. We were working with colleagues in planning around the next LDP to see if we can bring it forward for that, and if possible, bring it into future years.
LDP 3 will take some time to get through, and the site is there now. So would it have to have an exception to LDP 2 to get it approved?
We are in discussion with planning, so there are possibility to bring our full site forward, but those are discussions are ongoing just now. Even with funding, it's probably unlikely it's a site we could take forward this or next year, so we would be looking for potentially bring it into years 3 or 4 if possible.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So there's no other questions, so are we happy to approve the recommendations in this report? Agreed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Danny. And moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 3 for the Housing Services Annual Performance Report 23-24 and Assurance Statement. And Suzanne's taking this again. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the Annual Assurance Statement 2024 and note the performance report for housing services. This report outlines housing services compliance with the Scottish Housing Regulator regulatory framework, the Scottish Social Housing Charter standards and our statutory obligations. It also takes account of our current engagement plan with the regulator. The assurance statement is an annual submission required of all social landlords. The Scottish Social Housing Charter requires the Council to provide the regulator with details of performance against 37 performance and 32 contextual indicators by the end of May each year. This is known as the annual return on the Charter. With this information, the regulator will publish a summary report on its website, an engagement plan summarising the areas of scrutiny they will focus on. The links for these publications are provided in the report. In addition, the regulatory framework requires the Council to produce an annual assurance statement confirming regulatory and statutory compliance. The assurance statement requires a process of self-evaluation and to be accompanied by an appropriate action plan. The performance information provided in Appendix 1 demonstrates that housing services performs well, as improved in key areas in comparison to last year and to the average for the housing sector in Scotland. The report demonstrates good performance in the following areas. Repairs and maintenance, including gas safety, maintains excellent performance and is in the top quarter compared to other councils and housing associations. Empty homes, the performance to re-let empty homes has improved and the void rent loss has reduced from 1.8% to 0.9%, again performing better than the average for other councils and housing associations. Customer engagement, we undertake a biennial survey and it was last undertaken at the start of 2024 and has shown improved satisfaction across a variety of areas. However, there are some areas for improvement which have noted in the insurance statement and the associated action plan. Number one is regards to the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. That reduced last year due to a change in regulations for electrical insulation condition reports. The requirement changed from 10 to 5 years and as such there was a backlog of properties to address. As a result, our SHQS performance dropped last year to 59%. However, a programme of review is in place and to meet the backlog and the SHQS performance has increased to 79% at the end of March. We aim to have 100% compliance by March 2025. Secondly, significant rent arrears accumulated through the pandemic continued through the cost of living crisis. However, at the end of 23-24, gross rent arrears were 8%, well below the Scottish Local Authority average of 9.4%, but above the wider sector average. We have in place an arrears recovery plan to continue to improve arrears performance. And finally, members are aware of significant pressure on the homeless service with increased presentations and lack of appropriate temporary accommodation and permanent housing to respond to people's needs. As noted in our recent declaration of a local housing emergency, the regulator has deemed East Renfrewshire Council at risk of systemic failure to meet our homeless duties. As noted in that declaration, a number of activities are in place to address this failure and work is ongoing. If agreed by Cabinet, the assurance statement will be published for tenants as well as submitted to the regulator. In conclusion, as a social landlord, East Renfrewshire is required to prepare and submit an annual assurance statement and an associated action plan. The Council is also required to publish an annual report to tenants. The service performs well as improved performance in a number of areas. However, it recognises that improvement is required in such as homeless areas, electrical safety and rent arrears management. It is recommended that Cabinet note our performance for 23-24 against the Scottish Social Housing Charter indicators and measures, note the action plan to strengthen our compliance and approve the annual assurance statement submission to the Scottish Housing Regulator. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm not sure you took a breath during that. So, very clear update. Thanks very much. So, Councillor Pragnell.
Thanks, Suzanne, for this report. I've just got a few comments and 2 questions. So it's great to see the improvements in the emergency repairs, and the department should be commended for this because I know it was an issue with backlogs, but it's great that we're responding when needed. I've got a question on, do you believe rents are set at an appropriate level given the context of the housing landscape in East Renfrewshire? I note that later on in the paper that a large percentage of tenants are satisfied that the rent is good value for money. So if you have any thoughts on that. And on page 23 in the report, it mentions the percentage of tenancy offers refused. Can you elaborate on why this is an issue in East Renfrewshire?
Okay, with regard to rent levels, we are higher than the Scottish Council average but lower than the wider sector, and we are by a large margin the most affordable housing provider in the area compared to housing associations and other private landlords. So, and when setting rent levels, we did a number of work to ensure affordability, looking at living wage levels, minimum wage, to make sure that our rents are affordable, so we are comfortable that they're set at that level. With regards to refusal of offers, this is linked again to the homeless crisis. Most of our accommodation is in the Barrhead and Neilson area, whereas we get lots of offers, lots of presentations for people living in Eastwood who want to be in Eastwood because they have family connections, support areas. So we often find that those refusals are people who are from the Eastwood area of the authority who ultimately have to be offered a property in Barrhead and subsequently refuse it. So with our general waiting list, our refusal rates are low.
this is unlikely to change given the housing situation in Eastwood Side and given the grant funding at the moment. So I think it's just, if people are offered a house, then that's great, but we have to accept that there's choice, and this will continue to be an issue.
Yeah, we when people present, we have open conversation with them about availability of stock and other choices, but I suppose the problem remains that any strength the other options are limited and unaffordable. Although we do encourage people to consider them, it's often out with some people's range.
Councillor Anderson?
Just with regards to affordability and what Councillor Python touched on there, in terms of our arrears, I believe it's quite low. Is that, would you agree that if I said that, that was indicative of the fact that we are charging something that's affordable, that people, if they're in arrears, then so clearly, are we getting it right, do you think?
Yes, I would agree. The majority of our arrears were actually accrued during the pandemic. They're historic arrears, and we will work with tenants to make sure that they have an affordable payment plan, which is good for tenants, but often it takes us longer to chip away at that arrears level, because we want to make sure when they pay back the arrears they do it at an affordable level. So yes, I think the current arrears are affordable, and we do work very hard with tenants to try and get affordable payment plans for them if they are in arrears.
I take it the MARC team and Citizens Advice, you work with partners to actually point them in the right direction?
Yes, we will often refer tenants to MARC if we think there's significant issues around affordability.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Devlin, is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne, very good report, really good progress from last year. Thanks to you and all the team. This is not easy to show progress year on year. And those items that you've identified in terms of where we're amber or red, they've been fully discussed. There's no surprises there at all, and actually we're seeing improvement on the whole HQS certification, which, as you state, you're hopeful that will be cleared by the end of March next year. So very, very good progress. And the action plan looks pretty sensible and focusing on the homelessness issue that we're all fully aware of, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So unless there's any other comments, are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Devlin. Speak to you soon. Cheers. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.